Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Daily Compliance News. The Daily Compliance News is an offering of the Compliance Podcast Network. July 28th, 2019, the Sunday Book Review. We begin today with a work of fiction called Turbulence, and the reason I selected this for the compliance practitioner is it is about 12 people, mostly strangers, but they travel across the world. And I thought it was a great way to think about the need for travel by a chief compliance officer. You've got to get out of the ivory tower. You've got to get out of the office. You got to get out and meet the troops, and that means lots of travel. So I thought this novel really, it was a Man Booker shortlisted author, and it's a dazzling portrayal of the interconnectedness of the modern world. Next up, from Gretchen McCullogh, is Understanding the New Rules of Language, and she believes that her book is entitled Because Internet, it's Understanding the New Rules of Language. It's for anyone who's puzzled over how to punctuate a text message or wondered where memes come from. It is a really fascinating look. If you're someone closer to my age or studied as long ago as I did, you're probably going to need some help with this. So it's a great reference tool for the compliance practitioner who needs to communicate with millennials, or maybe even just figure out what they are talking about as they communicate with you. So interesting book. I think you should check it out. Next up, Beethoven-The Relentless Revolutionary by John Klubbe. This is a fascinating and in-depth exploration of how the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, and Napoleon all shaped Beethoven's political ideas and indeed inspired his groundbreaking compositions. There was imbibement of the Enlightenment in his hometown of Bonn, and there were lots of discussions around this. He moved to Vienna at age 21 to study with Haydn, and there the conservative city really, I think, took him in a little bit different direction. As Napoleon made strides to liberate Europe from aristocratic oppression, Beethoven desired to liberate humankind through music. You only need to think of his Eroica Symphony, which at one point had been dedicated to Napoleon. And when he crowned himself emperor, that's when the name changed. It originally was indeed entitled the Napoleon Symphony. So a really interesting look at the different influences on Beethoven's life and really how that influenced his music. And finally, we end with a book by Michael Straczynski. Sorry, I butchered that. And it's Becoming Superman. For decades, the author was one of the most successful writers in Hollywood, one of the few to forge multiple careers in movies, television, and in comics. Yet in this memoir, he tells just a really, really very troubling story about his childhood. His early life really nearly defies belief, raised by very damaged adults who indeed damaged him, both in terms of physical, mental, and indeed even sexual abuse, and how he found Superman comics as a way to work through that pain. He's had a difficult life, certainly in terms of relationships and trusting people, but it was very interesting how the comic book and the superhero really enabled him to work through these issues and become one of the great artists in Hollywood, literally from movies to comic books to television. His screenplay work is most excellent. And he's even done, like I said, some comic books. So a great story of redemption, a great story of utilizing tools available to you to overcome many of the disabilities and obstacles you might face. I hope you've enjoyed this Sunday book review on the Daily Compliance News. Premiere a new podcast today on the Compliance Podcast Network, Accountability, The Heart of Compliance with Sam Silverstein. Check it out. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio.